right. John, thank you so much for being here. I know you've recently had a lot going on in life and you're crushing it. You're doing fantastic things. I'm a huge fan of yours and I'm really excited to have a conversation with you and introduce you to everyone on my side of the world over here. And thank you for being here, man.
And thanks a lot for having me, Chris. It's been a pleasure getting to know you, and I look forward to the conversation.
Yeah. And for anyone that doesn't know John Williams, he's very present on multiple platforms, primarily YouTube and Instagram, if I'm not mistaken, right, John?
Yep, Instagram and YouTube are my primary.
Mm. So you've been hustling for quite some time. I think that it would be fantastic if you would basically just give us a recap of your maybe your entrepreneurial journey or really however you want to paint the picture of how you went from arguably pretty hard times
Hmm.
to because it's all perspective, right? But
Yeah,
some people listening might be like, oh, that's not hard times, but others might think that it is. To very successful in real estate as an entrepreneur and many other things. Yeah, can you tell us about the journey?
yeah, sure. So, actually, not many people know this, but when I was 11, everything was great. I mean, we were living in the suburbs, had a nice, little three-bedroom house, the family in the community. Life was good. Then my parents ended up getting divorced, and in that divorce, I actually moved in with my dad. But at that point, my dad lost everything, and he was sleeping on people's couches. He ended up buying this little duplex for $60,000. It was in a pretty ghetto neighborhood. I don't even know if you're allowed to say that word anymore, but it was in a tough neighborhood, right? And
We're not PC here. We're not.
yeah, we had no electric, no running water, nothing. It was freezing in the winters in Jersey, and we lived there for a year. We slept on an air mattress together, and we ended up working on that house together. And so after about a year, the house was basically, I mean, it's small. The unit was like 750 square feet. It was really small on that side. And we ended up fixing it up. And then he ended up renting out that other unit. And then at that point in time, I'm like, oh, okay, like starting to realize that something's clicking in my head. And I didn't really do much of it. At that point, I was like 13. But then my dad ended up running into, some problems, and I ended up moving around a lot. I went to 5 different high schools, and it was a struggle just to graduate high school. But then what happened was I just saw the light. I moved to California initially to skateboard because my friends are skateboarders out there. And then I ran out of money and I got into real estate. I'm like, oh, okay, I can, rather than go to college for 4 years, I can make more money, be around people that are in the industry I want to be in. And then I just became a realtor, and then everything else is, history. But one thing that I learned at that time was that you can never think that good times are always going to last. And you always have to be ready for a bad scenario. If something changes, you need to be prepared for it, be able to pivot. And I feel like right now in this economy, there are a lot of people that think that this good time is going to last forever. A lot of people are making money in crypto and stocks and real estate, you know, but things to me look like we're hitting an inflection point. And I think we could be stepping into some very, very big problems and a huge wealth transfer, which could equate to big opportunities for people that are ready and aware.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, there's so many follow-up questions I could go here. And fundamentally, I didn't know you're from Jersey. I'm from Connecticut, and that's where I am now.
Yeah, I was actually like Camden, New Jersey. It's like 7 miles away from Camden. So
Yeah.
it's like right across the Ben Franklin Bridge into Philly. I used to go to Philly like my whole childhood skateboarding. I'm like, that used to be, yeah, home.
Okay. All right. Did you ever venture into New Haven?
New Haven, PA.
New Haven, Connecticut.
Oh, I'm thinking New Hope, PA.
Hmm.
New Haven. No, I haven't.
Hmm. Well, you're not missing much other than pizza.
Oh yeah.
So New Haven is where the Italian American pizza was originated. Not that it really matters, but it was entrepreneurs that needed to feed the primary Italian heritage workers in the late 1800s a calorie dense meal with proteins, carbs, and fats. So they took the Italian pizza and turned it into the Italian American pizza. And that's what we have as pizza as we know it now.
That's pretty amazing. I did not
Yeah.
know that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
That's about all Connecticut really has to offer. Has some pretty good shoreline, but uh, it sounds like you had your hands full growing up, and you kind of like followed your father's lead, if you will, when it came to the vision and the path. How was your real estate experience as a realtor? Are you still a realtor?
No, I kind of let my license lapse. Um, yeah, so I was a realtor for 3 months in Long Beach. I sold 5 houses. I made, I don't know, maybe 25 grand or something, but they're really, really small commissions. And I was in this mentorship program where half the commission went to the broker that was training me. So I made like, 10 or 12 grand. And I realized that no matter how much volume I do at these low price points, I'll never really make enough money to, to do something big. So I got a letter recommendation from that broker to Coldwell Banker in Beverly Hills. And then ended up renting, it's actually a sublet in East LA. But it was like cockroach infested, bed bugs. Like it was disgusting. It was $400 a month. And that was what I could afford. And then I was literally just like commuting into the city every single day. And yeah, and then I just got around the right people. And I mean, it took me a little while, definitely, to like get financially secure. But my whole goal was just getting around people that were making better decisions.
So yes, yeah, 100%. So were you selling properties in Beverly Hills?
Yeah, Beverly Hills, Bel Air, all over the west side of LA.
Did that span like a long period of time?
About a decade.
Yeah.
Yeah. So like I got there like 23, and then what happened was I tried to do it myself for like the first 6 months, and like failed because I didn't know the area really. I didn't have a track record. I had like no competitive advantage, like none, compared to like every other agent in the city. So what I essentially did was I cold called these top realtors in the area and said, hey, if I brought you a ready, willing, and able seller, would you go on the appointment with me? And then they would say, yeah, because it's like 50-50, right? So I would literally just prospect on behalf of these people that everyone knew. And then I would get listing appointments. And then I would work like 4 to 5 agents at a time. So it never looked like I was one person's assistant.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'd use those listings as credibility and leverage to get my own listings. And then I just built it out that way.
Kickback City.
Yeah. So like I'd get 50, like my whole thing was like, I'd rather have 50% of something than 100% of nothing.
Yeah. I mean, that's literally entrepreneurship, right? Like
Yep.
half the battle is just showing up. I mean, and I think a lot of that simplicity is forgotten and overlooked. I would say not forgotten, but overlooked in a time of social media specifically. Like the simplicity of just half the battle is just showing up, and maybe half the time it works, and the other half the time it doesn't. And in
Right.
your case, you just had to figure out how to get something moving. So once you got it moving, was it a lucrative thing for you? Did you do any investing as well?
Yeah, I was investing during the time, but like it was more lucrative from the aspect of like the information I was gathering
Hmm.
through the clients. Like I'm still friends with a lot of clients that I built relationships with. Actually, in fact, my first real client on my own was this lease in Bel Air, and her friend across the street ended up. It was Elon Musk, his wife, and they ended up getting divorced, and they referred me the listing, and I got to to close that sale, all because of that relationship that was stemmed many years before. So it was like a lot of big relationships, and a lot of money flew like streamed through that career outside of commissions through real estate.
Yeah, well, I think, and that's another key point. Building relationships,
Hmm.
just trying to help people out, like going above and beyond.
Yeah, like that client, for example, my first lease, and it was horribly done by me. Like the paperwork was very bad,
Oh,
and
did you
like
fuck it all up?
yeah, it was horrible. And she called me complaining. I'm like, oh, yeah, it was my mistake. I'm going to stay on as a property manager. And I managed the property throughout the entire transaction. And then ever since then, we became friends. And that's how the referral came. Like I was just with her in Mexico like a week and a half ago. Like she got me a place right in about an hour north of Cabo. But she got me my own place and like showed me around, introduced me to her friends out there. Like this is something that happened 10 years ago. I met her almost. So it's pretty crazy how fast all of this kind of progresses through good relationships.
Yeah, and being self-employed or being a business owner or being an entrepreneur or just trying to hustle, and I think something is very overlooked. Even if you work for a company and have this mindset of just taking care of people and building relationships, even as a number two in a company or frontline in a company, you'll continue to be paid well and move up the ladder. I know a lot of number twos that make more money than the entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
Uh, not specifically who they work for, but having that mindset of just taking care of people and building people genuinely and purely, right?
Right.
So you made a mistake and then you basically donated your time, it sounds like, to fix the mistake.
Yep. I
Uh,
donate all the time to it. Yeah.
exactly. And now you have a 10-year lasting relationship, and the long-term value of that client will be far higher than if you just kind of ran away on the messed up lease and maybe made a small commission for the lease, right?
Yeah. And the commission was nothing. It was like $1,200. It was
Right.
nothing.
Yeah.
But then just that last referral was like 50 grand. So
Yeah.
I do think it all just comes down to good relationships. But what's interesting now is this dynamic. Like right when I got to a point of where I didn't really need the commissions anymore, like I
Hmm.
was fully self-sustainable without working. At that point, I stopped becoming a realtor. Like before, a little bit before that, like I stopped becoming like full-fledged door knocking, cold calling type of realtor. And I started asking myself, what does this career look like in 10 years, in 15 years? And I started realizing, we're gonna be stepping into a top-down technocratic society that is gonna be based on small commissions and a lot of legwork, and it's just gonna be a miserable life. I literally took the whole year off and I just read. And after that, I got on social media.
Was that recently?
Like three years ago, I got on social media, and then like the year before that, I took off reading, and then yeah, 3 years on social media. Now that I'm thinking, yeah, a little more than 3 years of social media. Took the year off before that reading, and then yeah, it was before that.
That's something I don't hear much anymore. People taking time off just to read.
Yeah,
That's impressive, and I'm sure you took in a lot of great content over the course of that year. Do you have an amount of books that you remember that you read?
yeah. Titan was a really good book from John D. Rockefeller.
Yeah,
Like a lot of the classics, like How to Win Friends and Influence People.
yeah, Dale.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I read a book. It was How to Play Monopoly in Real Life and Win,
Ooh, okay.
which was a really interesting book from a guy that had suffered a lot of leverage issues throughout his career, but he was one of the biggest investors in New York at that time. There's some really good takeaways from that. I mean, there's so many books that I've read since then. It's hard for me to like pinpoint just that year.
Yeah,
But yeah, yeah. I like my whole thing was I'd go on Amazon and I would just order like 15 books and I would just choose one at a time.
plow through them.
Yeah.
I respect that. Yeah, I think another good point, and I just like to kind of bring things full circle for anyone who's interested. Right, your mental diet, what you feed your mind, is extraordinarily important. You know, me personally, I don't watch major news outlets. I consume things differently, but the primary source of information is through reading. And it's interesting if you read about John D. Rockefeller or Dale Carnegie, like you just said, these guys that were titans or kings, 100 plus, about 100-ish years ago for Dale Carnegie, and John D. Rockefeller 130, 40 years ago. If I don't know his climax, but
Yeah.
somewhere in that point, the things that they teach and talk about are still completely and utterly relevant.
Oh, definitely.
And
Yeah.
it's just a matter of kind of like switching it to our current status. And both of those guys went through the Spanish flu, right?
Mhm.
And if
Yeah.
you had read anything, I'm sure you did, if you read anything about that last year, there was a lot of similarities. And that's interesting that you took an entire year off to read. I respect that.
Yeah. So John D. Rockefeller, now that you mentioned him, he actually donated $170 million to the Board of Education, right? And so he's famous for the quote, I want a nation of workers, not a nation of thinkers. And then he was one of the main investors or founders in John Hopkins. And there's rumors that his family is still heavily involved in the World Health Organization. So if you look at what he's doing, Bill Gates is right now currently heavily invested in New York schools education, right?
Mhm.
And so like a lot of what we see over history is a lot of people follow one of those footsteps to have that a long lasting legacy impact in how they define the word legacy.
Yeah, another guy that I've done a lot of reading about a similar time frame as Rockefeller is Andrew Carnegie,
Yeah,
the steel titan.
steel.
Yeah, he donated, and I don't know the exact figure, but probably right on point with John D. Rockefeller, amount of money to build libraries and schoolings and such, rather than give his money to family when he was dying.
Hmm.
uh, Similar, kind of preaching like health and education as philanthropists, as they were basically realizing that they accumulated all the money at the time. I mean, these two are arguably the front runners, Bezos and Musk, of 100 years ago, right? Like, give
Right.
or take. And yeah, I mean, it's the end of the year, so of course everyone's starting to donate money, right?
Yeah, yeah. I'm seeing all over social media. Everyone's trying to get rid of money.
Yeah,
Who
yeah.
wants to give it to Biden? Yeah,
Well, who am I going to give it to?
yeah,
Um, that's pretty cool, though. I think that I think it's a very underrated and again another skill that's kind of forgotten about, which is reading, reading the people that have done it before us, and and when it draws back to you, did you change your game at all after taking that year off and reading?
oh, definitely.
Did you pivot?
Yeah, yeah. So that was kind of I hit kind of a period. So it was like the money that I had coming in would well pass any of my monthly expenses. So I was like, okay, like I could have probably taken off a little bit earlier, but I like kept hustling, kept putting myself in a better position. Then I had this one client who was actually a friend of mine. I leased him a house in Bel Air to another friend of mine, and the initial friend that was a tenant ended up being just like a total prick, and kind of screwed the landlord over a little bit. And then I ended up defending the landlord. And then I'm like, I'm not going to do this my whole life. Like, my time is more valuable than dealing with these little issues. And then I just got to a place of realizing where society is going and realizing how less and less clout and power realtors will have eventually, no matter how big of a business you have today. And 30 years from now, it's going to be a lot smaller. And then I basically took off and I read and studied and realized that this is a game of data. We're stepping into a world of data, information, and those that have data win. Like Meta, like Facebook, like Amazon, all of these companies that are going to be
Google.
taken over are all based Google, all based on data collection and information, right? And so my
They
whole
have it
thing was
all.
like, yeah, it's worth more than gold. And so that's the world we're stepping into. And after that year, I'm like, okay, well, so understanding what the history looked like, what the world's looked like, where are we headed, what's the best use of my time going forward? And at that point in time, it was social media, gather an audience, gather data, gather information, build out a community. And then at that point in time, they can make a better and well-educated decision from there. So like I just started doing like heavy content creating or creation on the side. I was still doing like work for like friends and clients and stuff like that out there, but I wasn't hustling. I wasn't door knocking it like after I took that year off, you know.
Yeah.
So now like I'm doing social media and I'm gonna probably pivot again, in the future. But right now, this is I think the biggest opportunity for everybody.
Yeah, you've been discussing this in a very similar capacity as I've been discussing this. I think a lot of and this is just from my observation, feel free to tell me I'm wrong. A lot of your emphasis was or is especially around real estate. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes, but now I'm kind of reserved a little bit on real estate. I was very bullish on real estate like forever. Ever since a little kid, I love real estate, investing in real estate, seeing opportunities in real estate. But we're stepping into this new environment where now there's a couple things. So first and foremost, in Ithaca, New York, there's something called decarbonization, a decarbonization plan and agenda, which is essentially where they say all real estate structures in America contribute 40% of the carbon output, right? And then for you to get off of carbon, they want your all the fossil fuels removed from the property, right? They want you to have solar, and the cost they quote is roughly $50,000 per single family home, right? And so I'm looking at this decarbonization thing. I'm like, okay, that might be, a year, 2 years out before that becomes an issue. But now what we're seeing too is this whole new social dynamic and responsibility coming from landlords, where they went from being a company or an entity that was built to profit to now more of like a social justice warrior defined through the state, through like the eviction moratoriums and through these tenant protections. So what I think happens here is we went through the first wave of eviction, so with the eviction moratorium, right? I personally don't think that this is over for a long shot. I think that what's happening in other places around Europe and Australia is likely going to try to be, relevant here. I think they're going to reinstate some type of eviction moratorium. I think it's going to get harder for landlords to survive. I think we're going to have an inflation problem with the cost of food and just everyday life. And then we have all these investors now that are buying properties at a 5 or a 6 or a 7 cap that are going to be stepping into a series of losses. And the government is essentially going to protect the tenant over the landlord. And so at that point in time, I think the best time to invest will be when the pain hit the street. When they start doing that, which is what I think is going to happen next 6 months, I think eviction moratoriums will be coming back. And then about 8 months, a year, 2 years later, we're going to start seeing the decarbonization and all that stuff. They're doing it in Calgary, Canada. They issued a state of emergency 2 weeks ago. Whole place has to be decarbonized. So when they start pulling all these but what's really fascinating too about this decarbonization is that they say the solution is for private equity investors to invest capital into the well-being of society through decarbonization, right? So they're basically forcing loans on these properties. The private equity investors are actually getting paid a dividend from the loan that they forced onto this property. And the property is essentially tied to this loan. So if the property owner is struggling financially through a lot of these new changes, and they have to pay not just their primary mortgage but also this new loan, I think the opportunity to buy is in front of us. It's not here.
Yeah. Yeah. You definitely understand the policies when it comes to decarbonization far more in depth than I have an understanding of. The most important aspect of that specifically, in my opinion, would be 10, 20, 30 years down the road, if not further. I don't know if guys like you will be in the real estate game at that point. I will likely still be in. And trying to comprehend 20 years down the road and what that means to the small landlords like you and and other guys, opposed to private equity firms and I don't know what the right way of saying it, but political structure.
Yeah, seriously. No, that's what I mean. You look at what Biden buy. If you were to buy, they printed so much money for this new Build Back Better. Or I'm not sure if that was the act. I think it was Build Back Better. But if each house was 200,000, they could buy 350,000 homes, which is Delaware, for example, is 430,000. You could essentially buy the state of Delaware.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. They could buy Connecticut where I live.
Yeah. What I think is actually going to happen is I think that landlords are going to get fed up, the ones that can hold on, and they're only going to lease to tenants if they can get collateral up front, like a car title, like get something up front to know that they're protected. I think that's where we're going. Like right now, I was reading an article yesterday. CNBC put out that now 3 new states are offering free legal counsel for tenants, which means that they'd be more likely to take up that attorney for free, right? And the landlords, you have to pay, whatever it is that they pay between $200 and $400 per hour to their attorney. But there's also 6 other cities that were designated to offer this same service to all the tenants. So they're literally building out this hierarchy in which they divide the tenant and the landlord, and they offer these benefits for the tenant not to cooperate and work with the landlord inside of the agreement of the lease. And then they're coming after the landlord with every which direction. I do believe real estate is the best investment. I really do. But I'm a big believer of I don't want to play a game until I know the rules of the game. And all that's about to change. So like once things change, like I'm gonna run out there with a lot of capital and I'll make smart investments.
I remember we discussed at a different time, you put together basically a small private equity firm. Was that the way of saying it?
Yep. This is actually very interesting. So the company is called Home Assist. It's going to be a Reg D 506C fund. So we're going to raise capital. We're going to raise 20 mil online, and we were going to buy distressed properties. But the difference here is that the distressed properties we're going to buy, the homeowner that was in distress would have the opportunity to buy them back at the price we paid, right? But that whole period that they owned it, they'd be paying a monthly rental, like a monthly rental payment. So we'd make money on the monthly rental payment. If the market tanks, then we have a margin of safety because we bought the deal at a good price, right? If they walk away, we're still okay. We were going to buy them like 50, 60 cents on the dollar, right? But what's fascinating is that they kicked it back and said no. They classified it as equity skimming and said, oh no, you have to actually pay at market value. And I said, well, why would I buy a bunch of properties at inflated rates today with distressed homeowners? And it wouldn't make sense. And they're like, oh no, you're not able to do that. It's like, well, how can you stop that? But then say that private equity firms can force debt on people's properties.
Who says yes or no about this?
It was a transactional attorney that was referred to me through my securities attorney. And she's like, oh, what's going to happen is you're going to have a lot of people. If you buy 1,000 houses, you can have a lot of people that are dissatisfied because they can't get a job or whatever happens. And they could say, oh yeah, we sold the property at a lower price, and they do like a class action lawsuit is what they were saying.
I figured you were going to say that. Yeah.
But it's like, it's really unbelievable to me, because how would that be if you complete like a traditional sale? Like you have an agreement, like, okay, this is a lease. Here's the lease agreement. At the end of the lease, you could buy it back to the exact price we paid, excluding any transfer taxes. They would pay for the transfer taxes, but they would basically secure the house. Otherwise, if they're in distress, they're going to be in a position to lose their house immediately anyway. They're not going to be able to qualify for another loan to buy another house. They might get a little capital up front, but they're going to blow it all in rent because rent's through the roof. Yeah, it was just interesting. So we ended up changing, and now we're going to be doing this. It's a micro lending business that we're going to be doing online. We're going to be doing small loans online. So we're working on that now.
Is that more of, so I'm just going to make sure that I'm understanding, okay? It sounds like what you came up with, you saw an opportunity within the situation that we're living in to capitalize on.
Right.
An opportunity that maybe, just maybe, and I'm speculating completely, attorneys don't understand because it's new. It's a brand new idea. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So it's a new idea, but they just thought that in the event that the economy does crash, they could come back to you and sue you based upon the value at which they could have gotten for their home. And so if you do 1,000 deals and there's 30 people that, class action lawsuit, they get all the names and they go through everything, and they go 30 people and they try to pursue you. They said, you're opening yourself up for exposure.
I could see that. I mean, they're attorneys. They have to look at that avenue, right?
Yeah.
And if they can defend it, which sounds like it wouldn't be something that they wanted to do. The micro lending sounds a bit more par Q for money lending.
Yeah. So very small loans. We'll be operating in 20 states. We're actually working with every state individually right now with my accountant. So I think that they're going to be really short-term loans. I think that is probably going to be a more liquid option right now, and it's going to have less moving parts rather than like dealing with the properties and the homeowner state of mind on like mass scale. And I'm doing the numbers. It looks a lot better too on paper.
Who would be the customer for you in this business?
People that need bridge loans, need a couple $100, $500, $600. They basically would just go on the website, and they would do a couple things, and they would end up getting the money, and then the money would be paid back between like 7 and 14 days later.
So you're figuring out how to accrue compounding interest.
Yeah. Yeah. So rather than money die in the bank, like we need, like I need a vehicle in which that I'm gonna not just keep up with inflation, but multiply the money over time and be able to invest well. And then as I have money going in and out of my accounts, I can just keep recycling it.
Interesting. Just for my curiosity, do you have a background in finance?
No, I've just studied finance for fun. Like I've always wanted to. I wanted to get involved in private equity ever since I was a young kid. I always read about private equity and finance for fun, but I just never went to school for it.
Mhm.
But yeah, I definitely have interest in finance.
It's intriguing, right? Because anyone who understands money knows that where you really make money, uh, in this context, is bringing in APR, bringing in daily compounded interest. I mean, for instance, if you had a credit card company and you were getting
Yeah,
30% compounding daily on 10 million credit cards, I mean, you could
right.
you could own a continent. But fundamentally speaking, I respect that. That's savvy. It's very savvy to be able to do something like that and to be able to deploy it and likely be successful at it. A lot of the wealthiest financially wealthy individuals that I've met have done something in the financial industry and
Yeah,
real estate, but had like a debt collection or had a lending business. It seems like a lot of them don't didn't have it long term. It seems like it's like a short venture, like in and out, maybe for liability reasons, but it's always a very common thing when I speak to individuals who are very money wealthy.
hmm.
Um, I don't know if you've ever come across that as well.
Oh, definitely,
Yeah.
definitely. It's people. I think people that understand money and how it works, they look at things at a creative lens,
Hmm.
and they're constantly putting themselves in a position not just to buy great assets, but in between, they're looking for ways that they can multiply and generate more and more wealth to just continue distributing it. Because eventually, you run out of money. Like I've done it many times in real estate, where it's like you you put all your money into a deal, and then you want to do something else, and you're like, okay, well, all my money's in this deal. Now I need another way to get money. Either you're going to refi the property, you're going to, but
Yeah, they don't want to wait the year to pull the
you always
money
run
out.
into a money problem, like
Yeah,
whenever you're trying to expand and grow to the next level.
yeah.
And
I
so,
think I think
yeah.
I didn't mean to cut you off, but fundamentally, once money's understood for what it is, which is leverage, right? And learning how to move your leverage and use your leverage, uh, the game changes, right? And we stop putting money on a pedestal, and
Hmm.
it's almost like just a tool. It's a tool and understanding. Okay, well, if I have to put 20%, or if I have to put 50 grand into this property, okay, I'm going to put it into this property, and then I have to wait a year to pull it out. But I'll have more equity in the year, and there'll be likely some more money, whether you're going to refi or HELOC or whatever the plan is. You would be able to educate the audience far better on that than I. But the point is, it's just understanding that the tool, that the leverage is just sitting for a period of time, and then you could pull it out and do the same thing or other things. A lot of people that I know that have been in real estate have pulled a lot of their money out and put it in crypto right now
Yeah.
in the past couple of years, honestly. And a lot of people are doing really well on it. But I didn't mean to sidetrack you, but that's impressive. That's pure entrepreneurship. You're seeing the opportunities, you're seeing the problems fundamentally, and you're like, oh, I can help you with this. I can help
Yeah.
people with this, and I'm gonna solve some problems for people.
Yeah, so like when we had the second baby, my dad came out and stayed at a hotel. Right, the lady at the front desk was saying, "Oh, my friend's mom passed away, and they're going to list the property. They're going to sell it," and told my dad about it. And my dad told me about it, and we're closing on it Wednesday, all cash. We got like an incredible deal, and they're like, "Yeah, we just want to do a deal with someone that's not going to give us any problems. We just put the money in escrow, did a quick inspection, and we're closing Wednesday after the holiday."
Right.
But yeah, I mean, like that's money is key when you come across opportunity. If you don't have the money, then the opportunity goes to someone else better prepared.
Who has the
And right
money?
now, what I think is going to happen is a lot of people aren't going to have money. Next 12 months, we're going to see a lot of people that need money. So financial vehicles in which you can serve people that need money or need some type of assistance, I think has a bright future.
I think, right. So this is where we move into the future of what's going to happen. What I see, I think the fundamental understanding of money not only doesn't exist in especially the lower and middle class, And like, I'm middle class, like I'm from middle class. So like, I get it. Like I had no
Yeah.
financial understanding. I had to educate myself, but specifically when it comes to cost of living and the inflation that we're seeing on goods, not really services, but I guess goods and services is fine to say, but because of the cost to get the service to you. But over the next year, as everything continues to increase, for instance, in Connecticut right now, it's 30 degrees at night. So we have our heat on. The people that are marginal and don't have a savings account and are living paycheck to paycheck and not getting raises, but are paying more for the delivery of the heat to their home over the next 6 months specifically, and you're spending an extra few $100 maybe a month if you're living in a maybe 3,000 square foot home or 2,000
Oh
square
yeah.
foot home, you're going to bleed out slow.
Hmm.
You're not going to see it. Like, it's not a one-time hit to the pocketbook. It's not like someone took your bank accounts and they're gone. It's going to cost you an extra whatever, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000, 10,000 or more dollars a month to live,
Hmm.
right? To feed yourself, to heat yourself, to drive yourself, whatever, to get everything serviced, to buy products and services. And the money is going to slowly disappear. And I agree with you. Over the next year specifically, it's going to get a lot harder. Do you agree with that statement? And do you see Q2 as the tentative mark of a slight correction?
So a couple things. So yeah, everything's going to be going up. Food prices are going to go up another 20%. Uh, as in General Mills, they own a couple. They own a couple hundred brands or 100 brands. They own a lot of food, um, and they're increasing 20% across the board. The dollar store is going to be called, like, it's going to be the $1.25 store. Everything's
Dollar and a
going to
quarter.
$1.25. Yeah. So like everything is going up, right? Larry Fink and Steven Schwarzman, BlackRock and Blackstone, they said prepare for higher utility bills. So everything is going to be going up across the board. But one thing that will go up more than everything else is going to be crime in big cities, I believe. What we're seeing now is like massive theft across South Carolina, North Carolina, New York, LA. That's going to continue. I think crime's going to get out of control. And when people get to a point of, hey, if you have a kid, if you have a 2-year-old, you look at that kid and you don't have any money and you don't have any way to feed that kid, you'll do some things to feed that kid. And you're going to have 100 million plus Americans that are going to be put in that place. So I think we're going to see high crime. I think we're going to see looting increase. In addition to that, I also think that we're going to see a lot of mom and pop stores that can't properly defend their stores. So they're going to be facing insurance premium increases. They're going to face supply chain bottlenecks, and they're going to face high competition from big corporations like Walmart and Amazon that are now, Walmart's now delivering via drone within 30 minutes to some locations.
Yeah.
So I think that they're going to start dominating.
And Amazon's delivering Walmart goods in non-Amazon boxes. You know that, right?
No, I didn't hear that. Amazon's delivering Walmart goods and non.
Yeah.
So they're buying it and just like
Yeah,
upselling it to you.
basically drop shipping it, right?
Yeah.
So a good friend of mine runs a 1,000,000 square foot Amazon facility locally,
Yeah.
and gives me a lot of perspective on things. However, yeah, they're doing that, almost working as a silent partnership to a degree.
Yeah.
If you order from Amazon and it comes in a box that doesn't say Amazon on it, it's likely from Walmart.
Wild.
Yeah. And Walmart's doing the drones. Amazon's been wanting to do the drones. Maybe they are. I'm not entirely sure if they are. Are they?
Amazon's been pretty slow to it, but
Yeah.
one real big driver that's going to push them to the top is going to be these vaccine mandates.
Mm.
That you're going to have a lot of people that are simply going to not support certain stores and a lot of cities. And essentially, if these small mom and pop stores, they lose 30% or 40% of their business, people are going to take their shopping online. It's going to hurt these small stores even more. And I think that these big corporations go there, repurpose the stores, and keep them as like more of like industrial, like
Yeah.
small little industrial setups where they can just distribute to neighborhoods.
Yeah. Yeah. So you see next year creating a lot of different problems, fundamentally speaking, for people. Is that what you're saying?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. I think we're going to see a lot of problems. I actually think the problems are going to probably start the next month. They're going to start, and then it's just going to get progressively more challenging. Because what we're seeing is we're seeing the fabric of America get slowly unwound. And it's not going to be something I think that hits all at once. There's going to be some people that drop sooner than others, but we are seeing the biggest wealth transfer in America that I've ever seen. Like it almost feels like, John D. Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie days where like everybody's wiped out and there's just a few big players that take everything.
Gobbling it up.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, uh, something that I wanted to discuss with you. I know as we're starting to move towards the close of this conversation, the future potentially in gobbling things up almost in a monopoly aspect, which technically is illegal, so they say.
Yeah, right.
But metaverse, and I say monopoly, and I shouldn't use that word loosely, but in the future with AR, uh, augmented reality, and VR, virtual reality, and metaverse, from my limited knowledge and understanding, is basically the evolution of the internet, creating a space for virtually avatars of ourselves to hang out in, if you will, and do all sorts of things.
Right.
I see this specifically being a huge opportunity for entrepreneurs. I do see a lot of negative coming from it as well, which I'm happy to give my perspective on, specifically when it comes to psychology uh, and potential issues that humanity doesn't even know about yet, because AR, VR, a virtual space is so preliminary. But there's also a lot of opportunity coming for entrepreneurs to monetize if that's the route that they want to take. But I think what is important to state is the robustness of what will be. For instance, if Mark Zuckerberg and Microsoft are developing and have been for years to make this a thing, it's going to be big
Yep.
on many levels. And in this case, to focus in on for entrepreneurship, I think that in please, I'm interested in your opinion, but I think real estate in the metaverse is going to be an opportunity, not just physically in this life, right? Though it is, but in the metaverse as well. Uh, Billboards for advertising,
Yeah.
coliseums, buildings, and what's your thought on the metaverse to come?
So kind of reflecting back, remember what I told you, you like good times will generally are followed by tough times.
Mhm.
And right now, what I see some really big problems with the metaverse. Yeah, there's definitely ways to make money, but you can't forget who owns the house, which
Mm.
is going to be Facebook and Microsoft. And I think in the beginning, they're going to give a very great, um, visual of what it would look like for entrepreneurs and people to live there. But I think over time, it's going to be a top down control over the businesses inside of that metaverse. What we see now is with right at the beginning of the pandemic 2020, what they did was they offered $500 million for, I think it was Google and Facebook, of advertising to help people advertise online. And then at that point in time, they brought in more customers. They used one customer bidding against the other. They increased ad costs. And then now what's going to happen is we're going to see these small mom and pop shops trying to compete with big corporations for the same customer. And those big corporations are buying the customer based on the lifetime value of the customer versus a small mom and pop is just buying that customer for the one transaction. Well, what I think is going to happen is we're going to slowly start seeing people getting wiped out in that area, and people are going to go to the metaverse, and metaverse is going to have very lucrative returns for people to invest and people to advertise them, buying billboards and real estate, and everything's going to be great in the beginning. But I think that what happens is that over time we end up giving them so much power to where at a flip of a switch they can shut everything down, which is almost now what we see here with social media, except on a much much greater scale. Like, who knows, we could even get to a point, and this is pure speculation, I could be completely wrong here, right? But we might get to a point where we could see a scenario in which you need some type of credential to log online or to log into the metaverse. And that credential could be, it could be anything. You could use your imagination, right? But you need to hit certain boxes to log in there, right?
Got to declare your vaccination status.
Yep. Yeah. Like they're already saying right now that, you need, they're talking now that you need the third booster to be considered vaccinated, right?
Yep.
And they're talking about this. Facebook and Microsoft are the biggest players. You go to worldeconomicforum.com or .org and you look at who's in charge. A lot of the same people that are pushing the metaverse, right? And these people are getting all their employees vaccinated. Why wouldn't they make the people that are dependent upon their life vaccinated to enter the metaverse, right?
Yeah.
So I'm not commenting on the vaccine, but what I am saying is that you do give up a chunk of your right to make decisions if your whole life is at best an employee of Facebook or Microsoft, and they could just shut you down.
Yeah. Yeah. The power and control shift, especially on the internet, and as we see in real time with humans, is quite astonishing. I mean, it's happened in history. If you study the great civilizations and the
Yeah.
civilizations that weren't great, uh, no one just. I think the real question is how quickly it happens,
Yeah.
and how quickly it's going to continue to evolve. You and I are similar in the sense that we're always researching. Always, I research on a daily basis and have
Yeah.
been since well before the lockdowns in March of 2020. But the point is how quickly it's going to continue to evolve, and with metaverse, with everything happening that we've been discussing on this show over the next 6 months to a year, I really feel that the control and specifically control is going to only continue to increase. And
Yeah.
you're absolutely right on the metaverse.
So one thing that's very interesting too with the metaverse and with what they've done through the mainstream media is that the more that people are divided, they divide us through politics and skin color and beliefs and every which way they
Vaccine.
can divide, right? Vaccine, everything, right? The more they're divided, the less likely it is that they're going to go to the real social structure, which may be their family, it might be their friends. A lot of people have lost a lot of friends over the last 2 years,
Yeah.
right? The more divided, the more isolated people are, the more likely it is they're going to pick up a headset and they're going to join the metaverse.
Mhm.
And so, like, the same people that are funding all of these campaigns we see on all across the media are the same people that benefit from the destruction of America through this metaverse and through this whole digital technocratic world.
Yeah. Yeah. It's I don't really get scared. However, it's a relatively scary situation. And I think a lot of Americans right now, because specifically we're divided, are pretty scared and are pretty lonely. And a lot of people are going through tough times right now. And I think it's really important to accent that not only will it continue to get tougher, but with a mindset shift, it is combatable. It is you, me, anyone can shift your mindset to the positive and look at these times to come as an opportunity to capitalize, regardless of how much leverage, how much money you have.
Yeah.
It still can be done, whether you have a couple grand, a couple hundred grand, or whatever, a couple hundred million. Um, it's just extra zeros or less zeros fundamentally, right?
Yep.
And with the mindset shift of understanding that things are going to get grim for those that are unprepared, but preparing your minds, preparing your bank, preparing your body, preparing your life, there could be lots of opportunity for people at all different income levels and experiences. Would you agree?
100%. Well said. I honestly believe the next 3 to 5 years are going to be the biggest periods to make generational wealth, even if you have nothing. As long as you have that, and I don't mean to sound like, cliche, as long as you have like that curiosity as to what the future is going to look like, and you're building out businesses based on where the future is going, and you have that hustle, you're going to make it happen. Nothing's going to get in your way. But if you're the victim Victims never get anything. Victims are always dependent. And what we've seen in America is, being dependent is not always the best thing. They could, you give up a large portion of your freedom. But if you are a hustler and you do have that, that go get it attitude, you're going to kill it in the future.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the exact opposite of what society preaches right now, but it's the truth. If you take the victim mentality out of your life and arguably entitlement, you could go get
Yeah.
it. You could go get whatever you want. It's simple. I mean, everyone heard your story. It wasn't easy. However, you took the whatever 20-year road or 20 plus year road, and here you are understanding that yes, I've done well and I'm going to continue to do well, and so can you. And
Yeah.
everybody listening knows my story. I've gone through extraordinarily tough times and continue to push on and have done well and will continue to do well and make mistakes, but hopefully learn from them because that's the key.
If
And
you ever look at anyone that has like true success, they always go big strides up, big strides down. They learn big strides back up, and it just always it's never like a straight shoot to the moon,
no,
right? And so like one thing is like that you said it really well was the entitlement thing, and that a lot of people think that things come easy. There's a lot of pain. Have you ever see like an old classic Rocky Balboa movie? So there's a lot of pain that goes into that fight, and you got to be ready for it. And at the end, you'll get the result. You put the work in.
yeah, and it takes sometimes a decade or two, or
Yeah,
I'm just in my second decade, so all I could say is the first decade was a warm up, and I had some monstrous level ups
yeah,
and some monstrous falls, and
yeah,
that's just the way things go.
yeah. I mean, how great would life be if everything was just like completely winning? You wouldn't understand what winning is anymore. It'd
Yeah,
just
I
be
would
like,
just get tired.
yeah. But yeah,
Wow.
big opportunities for everybody out there that they understand where things are going and they're making moves accordingly.
And you do a fantastic job educating your audience and anyone. You're very interactive with people on all social medias, off social medias. If anyone wanted to find you, how would they find you on your primary platforms?
YouTube. I post on YouTube probably 2 times a day now, 2 to 3 times a day. So you can always shoot me a DM too on Instagram, but YouTube I respond to, especially like right when I first post a video, the first hour I respond to everybody.
Yeah, your YouTube channel is what?
This is John Williams.
This is John Williams, and it's the same on Instagram.
Same. Yep. Same on Insta.
Yeah, I would highly recommend you guys checking John out. Super cool dude, down to earth, has done a lot of really cool shit and continues to do really cool shit and just wants to see other people successful uh, because he knows as well as I and well as many other people know that if you set your mind to things and you stay focused, regardless of the bullshit thrown at you, it will come.
You're the man, Chris.
Yeah, dude. I appreciate you so much for being here. You just had a newborn and you're cutting time out for us. You delivered your newborn on your own accidentally?
Yeah. 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 I'm like you gotta show up. You gotta be present. Yeah.
You're a good man and I really appreciate your time, John.
Thanks, Chris.